Hello, and welcome to story number 7. So, if you are tuning in just for the first time, I would highly recommend that you go back and listen to these from the start because there is a chronological order. But if you really can't face going back to story number 1, I would really just say then go to story number 6, the one before this, because this is a two-part story. Now, if you have watched story number 6, Jamaica, to go or not to go, then you will know that Psalm 91 became a very, very important psalm for Val and me before we headed off. And I just want to start this by reading a few verses from that psalm. Verse 9 says, "If you make the Most High your dwelling, even the Lord who is my refuge, then no harm will befall you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all of your ways." And as we go through this and you hear a bit more about what happened in Jamaica, you'll absolutely see where Psalm 91 really became very, very important to both of us. So we started off with a rather funny thing in that we arrived at the airport in London and the lady behind the desk upgraded us to business class. So we sat back in these beautiful leather seats the whole way across the Atlantic and lapped it up basically. But where does Psalm 91 come in? The first time for us that it really became something that we were repeating often was one day whenever we had headed off the beaten track a bit. And I have to speak directly to all you young people out there. I mean, by young, I mean like somebody under 30, I suppose. You won't know an age without mobile phones, guys. But we did not have even the most basic phone with us. So we had no Google Maps. We had no easy way of knowing where we were and how far we were away from where we wanted to go to. So we went, as I say, off somewhere one day in search of Cascades, I think it was really. And we were walking for quite a while when this bloke in a pickup truck just pulled over, offering us a lift. Now, for the life of me, again, I don't know why we said yes. Probably we were just getting tired. We hadn't seen the river. We didn't know how far we had to keep walking. All those factors. But anyway, we were very grateful. And he motioned, that we just jumped in behind in this open pickup. And much to our absolute horror, what do you think was in the back of that pickup truck but multiple machetes? I mean, all manner of machetes. Some reasonably small, but others like way over a foot, foot and a half long. And Val and I are just resting our feet on these machetes. And of course, wondering what on under goodness have we just done by accepting a lift from this randomer going up this wee quiet lane in the middle of nowhere. But I'll tell you, Psalm 91 went round and round in our heads an awful lot. And basically, we were quietly both asking God for protection. And thank goodness, thank God, I suppose. The guy had no ulterior motive whatsoever, and he just took us up there for about maybe a mile and a half or 2 miles. And then, whenever he was needing to head off to the right, he just motioned that we would jump off, and we did. And then we kept walking. So all was well. But again, it's what goes on in your head, and you can build a thing up, of course, to be enormous. Now, the next thing that we found where we really had to be prayerful was in relation to camping out. Now, really, basically, before we left, we had this conversation, and we took everybody's advice on this, that you just won't camp out. People really were quite insistent that before we left, we would not camp out before we would promise that basically to them. So in our own minds, we did think it was really a bit of a crazy thing to be doing in Jamaica. And to be honest, folks, it wasn't the dumb thing out there. We never saw a tent or a campsite or anything. So I don't even know if we could have, even if we had wanted to. But, of course, what do you think happens? But we meet this fella who asked us if we had anywhere to stay that night. Val and I hadn't sorted anything yet, so we were honest and we just said no, not yet. And he said, well, if you want, he said, you can come across with me. We live on that little island, Christmas Island down there. So we said, well, yeah, why not? And he had already made it clear that he had a wife and children, and we thought, right, what's the harm really? And he was funny enough, he was a fisherman with one arm. I remember thinking, how did that man ever really fish? But he did. He was a one-armed Rastafarian fisherman. I don't even remember the bloke's name, but he was very, very kind to us anyway, and actually caught lobster while we were there, and he cooked a meal for us and all. It was really very tasty. But that aside, what happened whenever we got over there with him was that he apologised that he didn't have a bed for us, didn't even have a mattress for us, but he could give us a tent, and we could pitch the tent out in his garden. Well, my goodness, of course, you can imagine what was going through our heads at that stage. And we sort of just laughed, and then we thought, well, we're on a wee island, like it must be safe enough. But, of course, because of all the previous information before we left Ireland, you're on high alert, really. Your head is, you have to be, you just are. And of course, something had to happen. Middle of the night, and I must be honest with you, it was an idyllic setup. We were only a few meters away from the lapping waves, and we could hear the ocean coming in as we were drifting off to sleep. But somewhere in the real and the dead of the middle of the night, like 3 or 4 time, and it was still very, very black outside, our tent just lit up in this brilliant orange light. And of course, I'm instantly just awake and instantly worried and instantly can see a machete ripping through the tent, which isn't even our tent, and us being chopped up into pieces or something ridiculous. Anyway, I say to Val, waking up, Val, and stay alert. Some wee silly phrase like that, and she just turned over and fell asleep again. No help to anybody. But I, of course, then was mad, fully awake, and praying like mad, that God would send His angels to keep us safe here. And I could hardly even breathe. There was a wee while whenever I remember my heart rate was just flying, and I had to just try and keep myself calm. That light stayed on for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, which of course seemed like probably 40 minutes to me, but nonetheless it suddenly went off just as quickly as it had come on, and I was able to relax eventually and drift off to sleep again. And of course there's a logical explanation in the morning time. This guy tells us that they had friends staying over with them, and somebody got up in the middle of the night and didn't know where the loo was and was just touching various outside lights to try and find their way around in the dark. So we had a good giggle about it afterwards, but at the time you're just taken somewhere else in your own imagination. Now I have a wee photo of that very tent, and I'll stop here and let you see that before I continue. Now, at this point in my life, I had never been snorkeling before, and one day we decided we'd like to go out in a boat and do a bit of snorkeling. And to be honest, I really was quite petrified. I think I'm quite a good swimmer. I'd even done my life-saving certificate in America in 1991. But you see, the thought of putting that mouthpiece in there and breathing and diving down and all that stuff, I thought, oh heavens, I don't think I could cope with this at all. So we went out in a boat with this fella, and again, folks, what were we thinking of? I don't know that I would be recommending that to anybody today, but the guy was absolutely fine, and he never tried it on at all with us. But again, it wasn't maybe the wisest thing to be doing. But here we were anyway, heading away out for miles and miles in this wee boat. And Val headed off to snorkel, and I sat back on the boat, read a book or sunbathed, or both. And Val kept coming back to the boat every 10 or 15 minutes to say to me, Barbara, you would love this. there's just so many amazing wee fish in here. Big fish, wee fish, colourful fish, stripes. But it is just beautiful. Would you not think about coming? Oh, and I kind of thought, I bet you I would love it. She's quite right. Get over your fear here and try this. So eventually I did. And folks, it was something. You couldn't have made it up. You must you must know, of course, that we were out there without a wetsuit. And very soon, whenever I was in that water, Val was maybe, 20, 30 metres ahead of me, but I could hear a kind of garble of a message. So she was trying to obviously speak with this big thing in her mouth. And I kept thinking, Val, I haven't a clue what you're trying to say to me here. And I would pop my head out of the water and have a wee look over and see her, and she was in no danger. And I thought, I really don't know what she's trying to say. But again, this would come again. So I had another look around me. I couldn't see anything. The boat was still there. The guy was still here. And the next thing was, I was in the middle of an absolutely huge shoal of jellyfish. Well, look, I don't know much about jellyfish even now, but I knew even less then. And all I knew was that, jellyfish around the north coast, they can sting you and they give you a real bad sting. And I knew that, you needed to be careful and you wouldn't really want to get stung. So here I was, and I mean, utterly, I was just heading for them. 80, 90, maybe over 100. Big ones, wee ones, families out for the day out, it seemed. All coming for me. And Val had obviously seen it. She had been round the edge of it or something and saw what was coming and was trying to warn me. But it was too late, guys, and I was right in the danger zone. No wetsuit. Sunscreen, but nothing else. And in my head, I'm thinking, and miles out at sea, no vinegar. Nothing to help you, even if you got a sting. So I thought, right, Lord, that's it. Psalm 91, here we go again. And I just prayed and prayed and prayed, and literally these fish, I mean, it was actually very beautiful, and I tried not to be so overwhelmed with the fear that I couldn't enjoy the moment. And I quite enjoyed it in a weird kind of way, but I was praying all the way through it as well. These jellyfish, with the big long tentacle things, were just coming towards me, and probably about maybe a metre in front of me. Honestly, they just decided they were going to just veer off to the right or to the left. And they parted. And I never, ever had one sting. And I think poor Val was probably in a worse state than I was. But again, that psalm, and me knowing a few verses from it, were, I think, critical. I'll never be able to prove it, of course, because maybe I wouldn't have been stung anyway. Maybe they weren't even stingers, for all I know, but I was glad I didn't have to take a chance. Now, the most scary thing was what was about to happen next, actually. We knew that Kingston was dangerous. We had arrived with these two friends and spent a bit of time up with them in their orphanage, in their home, but then at the orphanage as well. And the very day that we arrived, James let us know that things were really, really bad at the minute in Kingston. And indeed that there had been multiple fatalities just the day before we arrived at some cemetery where it was gang warfare stuff going on about drugs and all. And he said, unfortunately, Barbara, where you want to go to, you have to go to there first. That's where the bus will leave you. And then you've got to get connections. But I'm afraid we don't know Kingston. We keep out of it. Mandeville is like in the country and it's safe. And they hardly ever venture into Kingston. And he said the wisest thing to do, in his opinion, would be, to kind of get there early and avoid crowds, basically. And he reckoned those kind of folk wouldn't be about early in the morning. So Val and I were chatting about this recently, and she has journaled it that we got a 5:54 bus Now that obviously is AM. And we headed in a very, very bumpy, uncomfortable bus journey, is what she has written, um, and encountered quite a lot of very aggressive people, which had been normal for us. The buses were always cramped. They were always, you were carrying all your luggage on top of you, and they were always sweaty and uncomfortable. And actually, the Jamaican people were aggressive too. So they were quite nasty, most of them. So the journey was no different than normal. And we got off the bus at this really dodgy place, this halfway tree, dodgy area of Barbican, it was called. And because we were really super worried ahead of this, we were prayerful. And we got off the bus, and I think we spoke to some guy, and immediately a lady, a wee bit older than us, but not much, which was very, very unusual. She came over to me and she said to me, "Are you going to Jack's Hill?" And I said, quite surprised that she knew where we were going to. And I said, "Yeah." And she just said, "Follow me." So Val and I put the haversacks on our backs again and just followed this woman. And she was quiet the whole journey, you know. She took us across big intersections, and then eventually, uh, like through the most dangerous part of the city, of course, for us. And we just followed her like Mary had a little lamb. And eventually, then she put us onto a bus, got us seats, and turned around and said to me, "You'll be safe now." So the pair of us just looked at each other and said, you know, was she an angel in disguise? And folks, again, I don't know, but we were convinced that somebody was looking out for us because of the terrible danger that there was potentially in that area, and the fact that she was a woman our age and she was actually being kind and nice to us, and all those things put together, plus Psalm 91, of course, just led us to believe, wow, God had been with us well and truly. Okay, that's the Jamaica stories wrapped up, folks. We'll move on the next time to other places. Bye.